I remember sitting and watching the Four Corners report that woke Australia up to the travesty of Don Dale and the youth detention centre crisis in the Northern Territory, seeing my brother boy Dylan Voller spit-hooded.
4 years since accepting the Royal Commission recommendations, the Northern Territory Government turned its back on key reforms. And this included the recent reversal of bail reforms that has seen an immediate rise in the number of children in detention. So currently in detention, over 70% of the kids in there are on remand. They shouldn't be in there at all. In Queensland, there was recent legislative changes that included the trial of GPS monitoring devices, increased police powers, and reversing the presumption of bail for serious indictable offences. In Victoria, new youth prisons continue to be built. Across the country, the favouring of punitive justice approaches impacts on our young people and their families.
We know there are problems. We know that it's important that people and the communities are kept safe, but we need to bring the voices of those people most concerned or affected to the heart of our conversations. And we also need to bring the evidence about what works and really try to reform our system across the country.
93% of Australians had no idea that children as young as 10 years old could be locked up in this country. Our children are 40 times more likely to be in detention in comparison to non-Aboriginal Australians in the Northern Territory. They've given police unprecedented powers to slap GPS tracking devices on children, and this is even before they've even been convicted of a crime.
Sometimes it's scary in court, sometimes you're nervous, sometimes you just have to, breathe. Sometimes judges, they think that if family doesn't come to the court, they think that family doesn't care for real. They just end up sending kids to the detention centre.
There are no support in these communities for children's activity programs. There's nothing at all. When is people going to listen to us and help us? Because we need to work together for our children.
When I have supports with me in court, that's when I don't worry about anything. So the judge can see that your family cares and wants you out of prison.
Family is very important when these kids are in that courthouse. Family support.
Pat did this painting for Cage, and this painting depicts a positive view of people working together to provide support to young people. Each circle represents a community in Central Australia, with the largest circle, Alice Springs, in the middle. Young people are situated at the centre of each of these circles and are the focus of each community. They are surrounded by adults, parents, community elders and professionals, all working together to protect them so they can grow up safe and strong. Each of the communities are connected to one another, showing not only the way that land is connected, but also the way that people are connected throughout family and relationships.
We know that better early years, access to counselling and support, creating safe environments for our children and young people is important to their life outcomes. But we won't stop here, and we can't stop here. The Victorian Government has made a commitment to transfer the guardianship of Aboriginal children, and it's the most significant reform we have in Australia.
The Royal Commission was yet another one of something like 60 various commissions of inquiries that had been instituted to look at the problems of Aboriginal incarceration, in particular juvenile justice. The Chief Minister of the Northern Territory received those recommendations and made a commitment to implementing every single one of them, including raising the age of criminal responsibility from 10 to 12 and not detaining any child in custody until they reached at least the age of 14. But those commitments are a long way away from being implemented.
If you take the pathway of trying to create community safety by just locking up more and more kids, in fact, not only will they not flourish, but no one will.
The truth is, if we want to really achieve safety, then we actually have to resource those communities to sort of support those things that actually do make us safe.
We've come a long way, and we work with our hearts, not with our tongue, not with money. We work from our hearts.
We declared that our work was going to be based on the principle of love. that the words of Martin Luther King, who said true justice is an act of love in public, that we were going to base our work on that, and that in fact we loved our youth and our families and our communities. And we wanted to see how could we translate love into the actual experience of the people we were serving.
Are you telling me that you had conversations with the staff about how to operationalize love?
Yes, in fact, the rhetorical question that would be asked every day is, what does love look like? How does that translate into a policy? So what is a loving policy? How can you translate this idea of care, of compassion, of belief that they are worthy of all that you have to offer? How do you translate that into your policy? So yeah, that became a very real conversation, an ongoing process.
If you're asking individuals working in the systems to see the humanity of youth, then you need to see the humanity of those individuals.
It requires the court ensuring that practices and services are provided that are culturally appropriate and competently provided. Plans presented to the court would be aimed to address issues of poverty, of housing and overcrowding, of education and health issues, but also the poverty of hope, the poverty of opportunity, the poverty of culture. Over the 22 years I've been doing this job, my experience is that respect for the rule of law usually happens when the rule of law and those responsible for delivering it shows respect towards those who are subjected to it. It is a two-way process, and cannot be a more important requirement when it comes to our Indigenous people.
What I'd like to change about court is probably more of the information to be broken down to the young people. When they walk into court, the law is another language, and a lot of people don't understand that language.
I remember sitting and watching the Four Corners report, feeling really displaced, but also recognised in that moment that I had a position of privilege and a position of power that I had to use to make sure that things like what was happening to Dylan and those boys and girls was not going to keep happening.
We did want to share our favourite African proverb. The child who is not embraced by the village will burn it down to feel its warmth. A lot of my childhood friends were traumatised and institutionalised, and some of them are still in institutions to this very day. I fight this fight for them, and I fight this fight for our future generations.